Hi everyone, I am live now with Mexie, who is a up-and-coming leftist YouTuber, and she has a great channel that's in the description. She mostly discusses um, anti-capitalism and veganism as sort of the main two topics. Today I brought her on to talk specifically about veganism, which is a topic that a lot of people have requested due to the amount of animal corpses that show up on my channel. So let's figure out how bad of a person I am. Mexie, you want to say hi to the people?
Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you to Natalie on air and express how deeply in love with her I am.
Oh,
Finding it hard not to be totally awkward about that, but yeah, I am obsessed. So thank you so much for having me.
you're
Um,
extremely welcome.
yeah.
So
um,
you just got a PhD, right?
yeah, well, I'm doing my revisions now, which is like death basically, but
Uh,
I defended, so yeah, I guess technically I'm a doc.
well, congrats, doctor.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
What's your field?
It's geography, so I
Hmm,
kind of like to think of myself as like a young female David Harvey.
I was about to say
Um,
that.
yeah. But yeah, I basically look at political economy and the environment, um,
Awesome.
which is actually what led me to like vegetarianism, veganism in the first
Uh,
place. Yeah.
wow. So you have a PhD and you're a V. So you're like a smart person and a good person. That's a little unusual. What are you doing on
I guess,
YouTube?
I guess. Well, I was just like, I mean, as you know, I watched your video about like being disparaged with academia, um, or just disheartened with it. So yeah, I just felt like I really wanted to start reaching people who weren't other doctors. And like even then, it's like how many people are actually reading my articles? I don't know, not that many, you know what I mean? So I was kind of like, yeah, I want to actually get out there and talk to people. So yeah, that basically prompted this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of similar to, I mean, I quit early, obviously, but like I
Yeah.
also just like decided that there's a lot of topics that are discussed only in academia. It seems
Hmm.
like they're not covered
Hmm.
by mainstream journalists, they're not covered by any kind of mainstream media, but they're like
Hmm.
intensely important topics. So it's
Hmm.
weird that it's like a community of like 150 scholars who are the only ones
Hmm.
talking about these things.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the promises of YouTube is that people who are interested in things that are outside of what's covered in mainstream journalism can suddenly call attention to them. Now that gets bad when it
Mhm.
means that people who believe that America should be an ethno state all get together. But the upside is
Right.
that, people who want to talk about, um, you know, like you said, hunger and or
Hmm.
anti-capitalism, and these kinds of things can also get brought up.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the veganism thing. Like,
Okay.
what's wrong with factory farming, or what's wrong with meat?
What's wrong with meat? Geez, a lot of things. So, like the way that people talk about this, it usually falls into three categories, like either health, the environment, or like ethics of animal rights and animal cruelty. So what brought me into the movement initially, like I started off as vegetarian because this was in my undergrad. I was in like environmental studies and anthropology, and we specifically learned like what a problem the meat industry is in terms of sustainability and climate change and everything. And that was like 10 years ago now. So it's only gotten so much worse. But at the time, it was like, this is a pressing issue. Like, we all have to stop eating so much meat. It's unsustainable. We can't keep doing this. So I was like, shit. And yeah, the classes that I used to take were just so depressing and shocking to me that I would sometimes leave in tears and just have this like real urgent like moral feeling that I had to just go and tell everyone immediately because I was just like nobody knows this and this is a problem. But yeah, people still don't know it. Like recently I don't know if you knew that that documentary Cowspiracy that recently came out.
No.
That was like okay. That was like the first like big thing to come out to like kind of educate people on how the meat industry is affecting our climate and like the environment. So I guess I'll plug that. Like if anyone wants to learn more, then go watch Cowspiracy. Um, but I guess I can talk a bit about how bad it is for the environment and why it's so bad, I guess. Um,
Yeah, so I guess most people, I mean, at least I, until recently was like very familiar with the kind of like PETA critique of meat. That like it's not ethical to animals. I think, I
Mm-hmm.
was a vegetarian for about 5 months, 8 years ago. I took a crack at it. Uh, and it was because I watched that, like, what was it, like Meet Your Meat documentary about like
Oh.
animals being abused. And I was like, oh God, like I can't live with the blood on my hands. Like,
Mm.
and then, 4 months later, I was living with the blood on my hands again. But uh, we'll talk about that more
Yeah.
later. So yeah, but so it's not just animals and their well-being that's the problem. It seems that it's also that
More than that. Oh,
this
sorry. There was a
this
lag.
industry is like incredibly bad for the environment and incredibly inefficient in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone commented on one of my posts recently, something that was like really well said, that it's never going to be sustainable, or it's never going to make sense to be the secondary consumer. So to be the consumer of something else that consumes something else that consumes something else in order to get like your energy or your calories or whatever, right? So yeah, that's part of the reason why it's so unsustainable and inefficient, is because like not only, I mean, okay, so first of all, we're raising the rainforest like so quickly, like 7 football fields a minute or some ridiculous statistic, to make room for animals grazing. But not only that, we also have to raise the rainforest and make room for all of this land space to grow crops to feed to the animals. Because like in the factory farming model, especially like cows first of all are supposed to be eating grass, but they're not. They're being fed like soy, corn, and grain. So I think it's something like 70% of the grain grown in the United States is actually diverted to feeding cattle and livestock instead of hungry people. And so like when you raise the rainforest, first of all, like the forest is a carbon sink, right? Like when you emit carbon, the forest kind of soak that up and then turn that into oxygen. So if you're raising the rainforest, you're losing a carbon sink. You're growing crops and everything, which is water intensive and fertilizer intensive, etc. You have all these animals grazing. They're emitting methane, and methane is a 25 times stronger greenhouse gas than CO2. So you're not only getting rid of the carbon sinks that you need, but you're also like increasing the amount of carbon that you're emitting and the amount of greenhouse gases you're emitting. And then obviously there's fewer forests to soak it back up. So yeah, that's like the first part about like CO2 and the forests and everything. And people will argue like, oh, but they're raising so much of the forest in Brazil to grow soy. And I'm like, yeah, they're growing that soy to feed to the cows because they want them to fatten up fast. And they don't have time or like the space or whatever. It's not economical to have them like grazing on pasture the way that they're supposed to be doing that. So all of this is related to the same industry. So yeah, I think it's like the global meat industry is responsible for, I think it's like 18% of the global greenhouse emissions, which is more than all of the cars and trucks and planes, like all of the transportation systems in the world combined. So it's like a huge deal.
So buying a Prius is not going to cover up for it.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not.
So I guess it's basic science, I guess, then that like it's someone used the word trophic levels in the chat. I guess that's what you're talking about with like I because I've seen this before, like right, like predator animals use up more. It requires like more energy to sustain them than because animals. So
Mm-hmm.
eating animals is like it's like the least possible efficient use of energy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I don't know. This is like I'm not super familiar with any of this stuff, to be honest, but everyone I know who's smart and who does research on factory farming and on the meat industry concludes that it's just the worst possible fucking thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah.
Not like so I eat meat, but I'm not gonna like disagree. I'm not gonna like come up with justifications for it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess the question when it comes to veganism for me is okay, so let's just grant as a given that the meat industry is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the solution for just me personally to stop eating meat? So maybe you don't think that's the solution, but I know that when I think about the meat industry and I think about the well-being of the animals, I think about the terrible environmental impact, all this stuff, I kind of like I'm at the grocery store, right? And I'm like looking at chicken and whatever. And I'm just like, my buying this has no effect whatsoever on the supply chain. And like, I don't know, I want it. And so I just get it. And like, so I know this is like not sophisticated moral reasoning, but I guess the real version of this question is like, why is this a matter of individual ethical choice as opposed to a political movement? Like, my thought on this is like, if factory farming is so fucking bad, and it looks like it is, why don't we just make it illegal?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's kind of like a lot going on in there, but okay, so first of all, in like I have a podcast also called The Vegan Vanguard, just a shameless plug for that. But in the first episode, we talk about how like we actually want to define veganism as a political stance and not as just like a consumption list of what you go to the store and buy. First of all, because like not everyone is in a situation where they can, like if you're living in a food desert, et cetera, you're not necessarily going to be able to eat a strictly vegan diet. So we wanted to find it as more than that, as like a stance against the exploitation and the commodification of animal lives and human lives. So for that, I mean, like I always say that the individual choices matter in terms of environmental impact. And maybe I can like share this like infographic of like how much water it takes, how much grain it takes, how much land it takes. Like it's ridiculous. Like you can like choosing to eat a vegan diet, you can have your like CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions, like as like in terms of your ecological footprint, going vegan, a vegan requires like 1/18 the land space that a meat eater does, like a tiny fraction of the water, etc. So in terms of like making an impact, I just feel like we have to collectively start understanding that we can't keep doing this and just going to the store and buying the same things all the time. If you have the means to buy like rice and beans or something else that's not meat, then it's not doing anything, like it's not contributing anything to like helping the issue. But yeah, I feel as though obviously it has to be more than that, because if your reason for doing it is environmental, then you can't just stop at just going vegan. We have to actually like attack capitalism and like the systems that are actually, you know what I mean, destroying the environment systematically. So it can't just be like one thing
I can't
and
destroy
then you're
capitalism
done.
by buying kale at Whole Foods.
No,
I can
like
try.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's a myth too, that like vegans shop at Whole Foods and
Mhm.
whatever. Like I shop at the discount grocery store where stuff is being sold that is like about to be bad. Like you have to just buy it like every day you have to buy something because it's going to be bad if you leave it in your fridge for like 2 days. But
Yeah, so a
yeah.
lot of people have this image of veganism as a bit of a snowflakey kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I remember like back when I was identifying as non-binary, I was like, I definitely can't be vegan now because I can't be non-binary and a vegan. Like, that's too many
Mhm.
things. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think
But yeah,
so.
no.
So, I mean, you want to suggest that veganism is not just like a fashionable lifestyle choice for
Mhm.
white women who went to college?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, and it's so terrible that it's being portrayed like that. And yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like if you kind of look on Instagram, a lot of like the big popular vegan accounts are like these hippie white women who are like eating these like acai bowls or whatever, and it's just yeah, it's kind of annoying. But yeah, that's not what veganism is. And I mean, like a lot of places around the world, like I talked about this in podcasts as well, that like a lot of people have been basically necessity just because meat hasn't been actively available. But now we have like foreign US companies basically going over and like spreading this because demand is dropping in North America and Europe. They're now being like, okay, we got to go target the rest of the world that hasn't so far been exposed to our like junky fast food meat products.
Mhm.
so so yeah, anyway, but yeah, like there's a kind of a misconception that it has to be necessarily really expensive to be vegan. Like rice and beans and pasta and veggies are like some of the cheapest foods. But people have this idea that like, no, you got to go to Whole Foods and like whatever, have your smoothie bowls, etc.,
Yeah.
which you just don't.
Well, I guess the smoothie bowls, they make the whole thing like more enticing. So maybe that's good.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're right that like I assume for most of history, like most people probably could not afford to eat meat very often because you have to kill
Mhm.
an animal and animals are expensive.
Mhm.
I guess my thought is that if you were to just, I don't know, I just feel like if we just made factory farming illegal, that
Mhm.
problem would solve itself. Like because then the price of meat would skyrocket, and then meat would
Mhm.
become much scarcer. We'd eat less of it. Probably our diets would improve, although the rich people would still eat a ton of it. But that's kind of just like the way it used to be, I guess. Um,
Mhm. And like
yeah.
we would never make factory farming illegal under capitalism. And like the reason that I advocate for it is because people are just like, oh, it's bourgeois, it's what's the point and whatever. But I'm like, okay, if we like, because I'm in the leftist spirit, right? So I'm like, if we
Mhm.
actually want a an earth for our revolution to take place on, and to have like a fruitful kind of a post scarcity future, then there's no way we can continue eating meat. So it's like, why are we going to wait? Like, why are we going to push it and keep going until the point where like we're at the point of no return, to be like, oh shit, like now we're locked in this like runaway climate effect and our planet has turned into Venus and we can't live? Like, why would we push it that far? Like, why would we not right now recognize that like we can't be doing this and go forward, you know what I mean, building our future the way that we know we have to do it, I guess. So yeah, I guess the reason that I talk about that is because like under socialism, if people wanted to eat meat at the same level that they're eating meat today, like you touched on it, that people haven't been eating this much meat like ever, you know what I mean? Like the amount of meat, especially that a North American eats, is ridiculous. Like people would usually eat like a small amount, maybe once a day, maybe once every couple days, right? But we're having it breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the hugest portions. So yeah, if people wanted to continue eating meat, it wouldn't be possible, even if we weren't under this capitalist system. It's still not sustainable. So I just feel like, why are we not starting right now? I guess like
Yeah.
especially because I'm like in the environmental studies kind of program, I kind of like, I'm one of the pessimists where I kind of feel like we might have already gone past the point of no return where the runaway climate effect is going to like happen regardless. So I'm just
Mhm.
like, I don't know, people who are just like, oh, it's pointless. I'm like, well, we gotta fucking do something and we gotta do it now. And like, this is the best way to reduce your carbon footprint, like bar none.
Yeah, so I guess I again want to take it back to this like ethical question about individual responsibility. So
Mhm.
reducing your carbon footprint, I mean, you can kind of come up with this abstract calculus of what is my individual impact on the environment. Um,
Mhm.
for me, I guess part of like I'm just trying to explore the psychological obstacle that seems to get in the way of my actually going vegan. I think there's like a lot of stuff that's at play, but one of it is like I find that it's difficult for me to feel um, morally responsible for my consumption decisions because I feel like I'm
Mhm.
a cog in this machine. And like, I mean, it's sort of like an ethical problem that comes up with any kind of like group action because you could say the same thing about voting, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think that voting, uh, I probably wouldn't vote if it were difficult to vote because I have this. I mean, of course, like if everyone thinks this way, right? If everyone thinks, oh, one vote doesn't matter, then that has a terrible effect. But my being the one who thinks it doesn't have a terrible effect. And so, like, what if I just want to eat meat and then, like, I don't know. It's the other problem is like just that I feel like I'd really have to reinvent my diet because so I know a lot of the people I know who are vegan or vegetarian, like they kind of don't like meat to begin with,
Mhm.
which makes it easier. I like, God damn it, like I just want it in me, like it's so, like it's just so good, like so it's like hard to stop. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like what kind of a reason would pull you in the most? I guess because I was in environmental studies and I saw like the severity of the problem, I was like, there's no fucking way I can keep doing this, knowing like what's coming and whatever. And I know that that weird thing of like, okay, but if I just do it, is that a problem? But it's like, okay, but if literally everyone did it, then it would be amazing. Like it would be solved right now. Like, for example, we're thinking of doing the most fucked up shit to stave off like catastrophic warming that would lead our planet to be like Venus, basically. So we're thinking of actually sending these like satellites out into space and blocking out the sun, like Mr. Burns blocking out the sun. We're thinking of actually sending around or like blowing sulfur dioxide up into the air to mimic like a volcanic explosion, which would again block out the sun, which would be also just catastrophic because also the oceans are being affected by this. And like if we're having this cloud above us and we're pumping up CO2 underneath it, that means that we would never be allowed or like we would never be able to let that cloud dissipate because if the sun would then hit all of the CO2 that we've been pumping up under the cloud, like we would just die like instantly. So like we're considering all of these things and like no one is talking about like if everyone just even if you don't go vegan, like this is the thing, like people kind of, you know, they feel really like, well, I can't, it's too big of a step, like I can't do that, right? But it's
Mhm.
like fine, even if you like ate vegetarian like 3 days a week, that's still something, like that's still a bit, like if everyone just reduced a lot or like was more conscious of what they were eating in terms of animal products, it would make such a huge difference that it's like we wouldn't have to do these ridiculous things. And it's just like, I don't know, I don't really know how to convince people to be like it's worth it, guys. Like why are we,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Another like I
I
don't
mean,
know, like sorry, go ahead.
it seems like the obstacle is getting like what I think it is like there's some kind of psychological obstacle, and it seems like for you it's like studying these issues that causes you to confront this like very shocking reality of these problems that have arisen out of the meat industry, and that's sort of enough to like motivate you on a day-to-day basis to like live your life in a certain way. I mean, maybe what I need to do is like just like get up every morning and watch like horrible factory farming videos, make myself like nauseated, and then not want to eat meat for the day. Um, it might
Yeah.
take
Have
something.
you seen Earthlings? You should watch
No.
Earthlings. And then I haven't even watched it because
Yeah.
I would be sick. But like, yeah, you should watch
I maybe
that.
need to be sick. Like I need the like Clockwork Orange conditioning to make me be a good
Mm.
person, because
Then check out
otherwise,
Earthlings.
I'm just like like a sort of short attention span hedonist that just like because the problem is like the meat is like
Mm.
it's just like right there all the time, and like
Mm-hmm,
you just
mm-hmm,
don't have to think about it. But I I guess if I think that one of the problems is that these sort of catastrophic climate change issues,
mm-hmm,
it's like they're so big and so overwhelming that you sort of just feel
mm-hmm,
helpless against this, like, oh god, like the earth is fucked and like I'm just one person. um
mm-hmm. Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's one of the problems with like that apocalyptic kind of messaging. It's like it
mhm.
either will motivate you to be like, okay, fuck, we got to do this. Like we have to do this yesterday. Like let's get on this, or it's gonna just like paralyze you in this like, okay, like we can't do anything. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm just like for me, like, and I it's like, okay, this is like weird, but I've never wanted kids. So I was always kind of like, well, whatever. I'm just going to like fight for the future just because. But I'm like, if anyone wants children, it's like, okay, but like the fisheries are set to collapse at like 2050. I will still be alive, you know? And I'm just like, I don't want to live through that. And I'm like, why does anyone want to live through that? Like, you know what I mean? Like
we
we
just
could
don't we
be
just don't want to think about it is the thing,
great,
right?
great,
Like,
great. But I'm like, you'll still be alive. I feel like people kind of think like this is like really far off, but it's like within our lifetime, like shit's gonna go down and it's not gonna be fun. So it's like, I don't know.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, that's a good point. I mean, so I think that maybe that there needs to be a sort of psychological motivation to go vegan that's not necessarily connected to the most philosophically or scientifically compelling reasons. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
like I guess in my head, I guess I tend to be sort of critical of the like sort of personal sense of like purity that I feel that some people have, like, you know, where like it's just a principle of the thing, like they won't even eat meat that someone else bought, you know, where it doesn't really have any impact. And like there's this sort of general sense I have that this like freegan stuff, like you sort of exempt yourself from participating in the capitalist economy. Well, exempting yourself doesn't stop it. It just sort of cleans your hands of the situation and steps away. But maybe the purity thing like helps in a sense, because like I think for me, one of the problems was that I didn't have a very pure view of my vegetarianism when I was trying that. Like I was willing to make exceptions left and right. And, you know, well, someone else bought this meat. Well, this meat was on sale. Well, you know, this next thing, you know, like you're at Burger King again. So making a rule for yourself seems to work better. And
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's different for everyone, you know? Like, I think it's like different psychologically for everyone. Like, I actually started the transition like very slowly. So I started like with pescatarianism, so I was still eating fish and whatever, and then I just like kind of very slowly like was like, okay, because I learned about the egg industry, then I was like, oh, that's fucking awful, so I got rid of that, and then I learned about the dairy industry, and I was like, whoa, that's even more fucking awful, so I'll get rid of that, right? So for me, it was important to do it in like a slow, small steps, because otherwise, like, I would just go back on it. And like, frankly, now it's like, I'm not like, again, like, I don't really define my veganism as my consumption like 100%. Like, I'm drinking this wine right now. I'm actually not sure if it's a 100% vegan, but I'm like, that doesn't like derail me and make me feel like I'm not a vegan anymore, because it's like, no, I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm also raising awareness and like trying to put pressure on like different, you know, companies or organizations to like do better. So yeah, I guess it's different for every person, but yeah, I guess you have to find like that gotcha. And for some people, it's like health. For some people, it's like diet. It has nothing to do with ethics or the environment or whatever. But yeah, I guess I just feel like it's super necessary.
yeah, so that kind of like stuff like health and diet and like,
Mhm.
you know, the vague kinds of, I just feel better when I don't eat meat. Like,
Mhm.
I think that that the one reason why those motivations seem to work is that it's like a personal motivation that it's
Mhm.
easy to think about, and it's easy to make decisions based on that. It's hard to make decisions based on, oh God, we have to block out the sun. Like that's not what I can't think about blocking out the sun while I'm at the grocery store. Like
Yeah.
it just seems too distant and implausible. Like
Mhm.
I just can't emotionally connect it. And this might be
Mhm.
why humans are doomed, right? Is that we
Mhm.
can't think about these big things when we make little choices. But
Mhm.
you know, you can think about your health when you're at the grocery
Mhm.
store to some extent. I mean, obviously, I
Yeah.
don't, but people do. And it's like,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like anyone, I mean, like if you, when you get older, like how many people are having heart attacks now? So when you have a heart
yeah,
attack, basically you're forced to go vegetarian or vegan, because it's like, okay, that's enough. And like so much information is out there now. Like, I don't know, I can share some links in the thing about like how meat eating actually leads to like cancer and diabetes and heart disease and everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's different reasons for different people. I find that if you like and you know, I kind of went slowly with it, but I found that like after a while of doing it, then you really no longer look at the stuff as food. Like for me now, the thought of like eating a dead animal's flesh, like it's kind of like, imagine eating like a dead dog's flesh. Like, would you just be like, oh, that is fucking sick, I would never do that? Like for me, it's like, you know what I mean? Like people, like there's like this cognitive dissonance between
yeah,
like animals that we decide are okay to kill and eat and animals that are not. Like, if you know what I mean, like we're not like carnivores. Like if I walk out in the street and see like a dog walking, I'm not like
yum,
salivating and thinking like I want to go like just rip into that thing. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Or if I see like a dead bird on the ground, I'm not like, ooh, let's cook that up. But like dead chickens that die in like these terrible tiny coops, and like they die, like they're sickly as fuck in there, like they're gross, like they have like, you know, a lot of illnesses and everything, like that's why they've died. But people don't know that, like they're actually like washed in bleach sometimes, like, and then fed to people, because it's like they're so sickly. And then people are like, chicken. And it's like, if you only knew like what you were consuming, you would be like projectile vomiting everywhere. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like when you start to like, I don't know, become like aware of like all of that, then you really no longer look at it as food. It's like, yeah, I really don't want this like bleached carcass of this like I don't know.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, that's maybe probably a powerful motivator. Like, I think that there's this kind of silly hypocrisy that's pretty common with Americans, where like they look at like like Korean or Chinese industries around like eating dogs, for example, and then
Mhm.
they just like, this is the most evil thing, because like Americans have this thing for dogs where like a dog's life has more value than a human's life, and
Mhm.
like, but we just have no problem whatsoever with anything that we do to pigs. It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess my problem is that I just have like a suppressed disgust response in general. So just things that I should be bothered by don't bother me, and does the, I'll eat the dead carcass, whatever. But like,
Mhm.
I so I think that for me, actually, maybe probably I need to use reason, but the disgust
Mhm.
thing is, I think, powerful, because a lot of people find the idea of eating, yeah, dead flesh gross. Um,
Mhm.
the way that reaction is prevented by the way meat is presented, right? Like,
Mhm.
you, eh, the meat industry is organized so that you don't have to confront animals
Mhm.
at all. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, and like for people who are like, oh, you know, I just don't care about what happens to animals. It's like, yeah, but there's a total disconnect there. Yeah, because if you had to like look at
because
somebody
they
like
do care. Yeah.
right, right. It's like if you had to sit there and watch somebody string up a dog or like even like a pig, like, you know, like people love like baby piglets or baby, you know what I mean? It's just like imagine that thing strung up in front of you, someone slitting its throat, like skinning it, like taking the skin off of it, and then like cooking it and presenting this to you. Like you would just be like so scarred, like you would just be like crying and like you know what I mean, like you'd be like fuck that, like no thank you, you know what I mean? So I don't know, there's this, yeah, there's just this huge disconnect about how people think about different animals and this
Yeah.
idea that like, well, it's fine if all of these like baby piglets are kept locked up and treated like shit and like clubbed and then eaten, like I don't know. But like my cat, like you know what I mean, if someone murdered your cat in front of you, you would be like just absolutely devastated.
Yeah, I guess that we tend to, part of that's just that we form like these emotional bonds with pets,
Mm.
and they then
Yeah.
seem like, people almost, whereas like
Mm-hmm.
a pig a pig I've never even met, like it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to form feelings about
That's
them.
true. That's true. But then if you kind of imagine like, okay, what if you did meet that pig and what if like,
That's
you know,
true. I
you
could be
were
friends with
playing
that
with it
pig.
and like, yeah, exactly. Or like, yeah, so I don't know. A lot of people even have like baby pigs as pets now. So it's like, how can you have this baby pet pig and then eat bacon still? I don't know.
Yeah. It's so can we talk about like the gender politics of this?
Yeah.
Because I think there's also, because like that definitely an obstacle too for about 50%
Yeah.
of the species. Like, I think
Mm.
I am probably like more like willing to be a vegan since I transitioned. Because like
Yeah.
there's just like something like very feminine about being like, actually I'm a vegan, and like,
Hmm.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
think a lot of men like have this, because it's like it's filled with like symbolism, right? Meat, because there's
Oh
like
yeah.
blood and manhood and vitality all mixed
Yeah.
into this, idea of consuming red meat. Um,
Hmm.
and if you stop eating that, you could become a soy boy. Um,
Yeah.
what do
Yeah, the
we
soy
what do we
boy
do with
shit
what do we
is
do with, what
like
do we do with these guys?
yeah, the sober shit is like not helping. Although luckily it's like PJW, like people just think he's such an idiot in the first place that it's actually kind of like probably making giving more interest into like soy and like
Yeah,
alternatives to
it
meat.
could actually be paradoxically helpful, right?
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if the worst dum dums on the internet are mocking soy boys, like there could become like soy boy
Mhm.
chic, like H
Right.
Bomber guy, right? Like has with his
Yeah.
all soy diet
Right.
in
Exactly.
response
Yeah.
to.
And
Yeah.
like pointing out that that brain force shit contains soy.
Oh my
So
God,
it's
right.
like, yeah. But no, I actually made a whole video about this on my channel. Like when I first started my channel, it was like a vegan channel, but I deleted so
Mm.
many of those videos because they were so bad and I did not know how to edit or anything. It was just terrible. But I really discussed this, yeah, this idea of like meat and masculinity and like how it was just so damaging to both men and women. Like, yeah, this idea that meat is masculine and powerful and everything, and like men, they did studies and like it was like even in school, even as like children, like young boys watching like footage of like animal slaughter or whatever would be far more likely to make some joke about how it was like bacon or something, right? And just
Yeah.
being totally like dissociated from that kind of like pain and like suffering and exploitation. Anyway, yeah, it's been linked to like kind of like patriarchy and the same kind of like callous disregard for like female bodies, or you know what I mean, like just
Yeah.
like not giving a shit about violence against these bodies. um
Yeah. And my feeling about that is that,
Capitalism, because it's like it's just advertised so heavily in the media, like wings and beer and like
yeah, yeah,
I don't know, eat steak like a man or whatever. And it's problematic. Like it's problematic for the planet, it's problematic for like men's health, and it's problematic for just like the overall tenor of like discourse in America around food and like oppression
the,
and violence.
the one thing I will say that I think is hopeful is that I think that this is an entirely culturally constructed thing. Like, I think that we sort of like sort of sympathy for animals is in generally sort of coded as feminine. Um, but there's the dog exception, where it's no level of love and obsessive devotion and empathy is excessive when it comes to a man and his dog. Why is that? Well, I think it's kind of because like dogs are just kind of coded as having masculine attributes, in particular like sort of soldierly attributes like loyalty and
Mhm.
friendship of a kind of like masculine kind that makes that a man bonding with his dog a patriarchally acceptable form of human animal affection.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
That is
I don't
true.
know. Maybe what we need to
Yeah.
do is like convince everyone that pigs are
Yeah.
like men, or
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. I don't know where we're going with this.
I know it's hard though, because like the messaging that we're getting is just like, yeah, people don't even consider them to be animals. They consider them to be livestock. Like it's just like, no, this
Yeah.
is pork. This is not a pig. This is pork. This is not a cow. This is beef. You know what I mean? And like they've done studies upon studies of like how pigs are actually so intelligent and so emotional and so like even more so than dogs. But it's like, I don't know, like people like willfully want to have that disconnect, and so they just
Mhm.
do, and they are able to do that because like it's illegal to show footage of inside slaughterhouses. Like if people could just actively see what went on all the time, they would be like, okay, fuck no, we can't do this. You know what I mean? Like there's no pretending, like there's no veneer, there's no amount of like sanitization and like pretty wrapping and advertising that can just like make us forget that this is actually what's happening. But in this like current system, it's, yeah, the way it's presented to us is so pre-packaged and so like dressed up that it's like people, I don't know how people haven't made the connection between like loving your dog and like loving these other animals, or like not wanting them to be harmed, but
I think that
here we are.
I think that linguistic point about beef versus cows, pork versus pigs is really it's interesting. Like, I wonder
Mhm.
if no one's done a psychology study on this, someone should. But are people more likely to have moral like hesitance about eating animals that don't have a euphemism name for them? Like, are people more sympathetic with duck, rabbit, and octopus than they are with beef, pork, and I guess, well, chicken is chicken, but like
Mhm.
and like veal, for instance. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. That would be. I think this is like it's also kind of there's like this interesting like class story here, right? Like,
Mhm.
because the food words are French derived and the animal words are Germanic because of
Mhm.
like right Norman invasion. So uh,
Mhm. Yeah.
There's also kind of like a
Yeah.
class delicate, like avoidance of the animal that's sort of built into the food talk. Um,
Yeah,
the
for
people who
sure.
have to deal with this animal call them cows, and the people who eat them call them beef.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if people were like, if veal was actually called baby calf, like I feel like people would be like, oh my
Yeah,
God, like I don't think I want to eat that. Like,
yeah.
you know, baby calf that's been locked in a crate so it can't move and develop its muscles so it stays tender. Like, I don't know about
Well,
that.
what they could do is you could make if I know that capitalism is the obstacle, but like, what if like we convinced somehow like there was like a vegan lobby and you got labels like you have on like cigarettes where it says
Yeah.
like instead of lamb it's labeled like dead baby sheep horribly murdered for your pleasure, and like
Yeah. And they showed a picture of its like carcass being like
of the
slaughtered.
of the
Yeah.
carcass being disassembled. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that would be perfect. I wish that that would happen because like there's such a disconnect, but it's like yeah, of course, I mean under capitalism that would never happen. But I guess I push hard because like people kind of have this idea that like oh, but if we abolish capitalism then everything will just be great and like the way to
Mhm.
solve the problem and the way towards animal liberation is abolishing capitalism. And I'm not arguing that we shouldn't do that because obviously yeah, capitalism is always going to want to like exploit sentient beings and bodies in all forms in all possible ways, but I'm just like do you think that all of a sudden if we abolish capitalism then like everyone who has not even thought about this at all, who has no idea about like the sustainability issues, who has no concept of like cognitive dissonance or whatever, like do you think that all of these people now under socialism would just be like okay I'm gonna just like why would I'm going to stop eating animals? Like, no, they would probably still keep going. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's not the only thing we have to do. It's like it has to be both. Like you have to be grappling with this. You have to be thinking about it. Like it, yeah, it has to be both.
Yeah, that makes me feel like we're very much in trouble because it seems like the arguments like the arguments against me are largely based on like reason and like considering the future survival of our own species, but capitalism doesn't actually care about that. It cares about
Mm-hmm.
supply and demand right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's quite a situation that we've put ourselves in, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, someone,
Exactly. But that's why I'm
yeah,
like, okay, like the odds of us overthrowing capitalism like anytime soon are quite small. Like
right.
we need vast education and organization and everything. So it's like what we can do right now, it's like I know people don't like individual action, but it's like what we can do right now is do this. Like we can affect the demand right now. Like it's already happening in the United States where like demand is dropping, like all of these dairy farmers are going out of business or they're switching to plant-based milks. So yeah, like it's like we can already do that immediately and then continue with this broader project. But if we just keep doing the same shit over and over and just throw up our hands and say like it's too big, like we can't fight capitalism or we can't do that, like we're not going to get anywhere. You know what I mean?
Okay, I think that's convincing to me because like you said something earlier about like there has to be like a planet left for there to be a revolution on. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
that's that is yeah, that's a good point. So
yeah.
like basically for the future of humanity, we have to use the tools that we have within capitalism, including,
Mhm.
you know, maybe even resorting to a kind of like commodified idea of veganism to sort of fix the imminent disaster that we
Well, it's
that
like if you have the means, then yeah, then do it. And then
yeah,
on top of like that doesn't have to stop you. It's not like doing
is that
that is like,
competing
okay,
with the
that's it.
yeah.
Like that's your only action that you're doing. Like, no, do that. And then also organize for social justice, environmental justice, economic justice. Like keep working on that. But it's like we don't have time to like fuck around anymore. So it's like I just don't understand like the like oh but let's just wait for capitalism to be overthrown. It's like it'll be too late and like what's the
Oh
point then,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, so this is like so people sometimes when people sometimes mention us in the same sentence, it's usually because they call us idpol leftists. But like
Yeah.
it's the same thing with like trans activism or like
Hmm.
gay rights or feminism, is that
Hmm.
like there are definitely people who say like, oh, capitalism is the problem, capitalism is the problem. Well, it's like,
Yeah.
look, if you're a woman or a trans person or a queer person, like you can't just sit around waiting for the revolution. Like you have to live your life now in the early 21st century, and like
Right.
you're not going to just hold off until the revolution.
Yeah.
Like so,
Yeah.
yeah, you gotta have. So I agree, right? The response that has to be like we do both.
Hmm.
It's bad if you only do one, right? Like so if you
Hmm.
because like we've talked about the Whole Foods fashionable vegans, like that is
Hmm.
bad, right? Because if you're not
Hmm.
also talking about the like big picture environmental justice, social justice, then
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
obviously
Yeah.
not super cool.
Yeah, that's terrible because it's like, those kind of vegans who like are just like eating a diet and not actually thinking like politically about bigger issues. It's like, okay, you could be buying vegan chocolate that was made with like child slavery in Africa. Like, you know what I mean? You're
Mhm.
contributing to so much exploitation and degradation of the environment in other ways. So it's like we have to also attack this like broader system. Like, or yeah, I don't know. Like, there's just like so much more of a picture than just eating food. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeah, it definitely has to be both. But yeah, I agree. Like, Anarchopec made this funny tweet a long time ago where it's like, can you imagine if like the civil rights movement or like women, like the suffragettes, had just like waited for the revolution? You know what I
right. We'd
mean?
still be waiting.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So someone super chatted, and I've seen a lot of people ask this question, asking, "What about lab grown meat?" So
Mhm.
I don't know. Do
Yeah.
you know
Um,
much about that? I
Yeah, so
don't.
they're they're working on that now. I had promoted this one company a while ago. Can't remember what they were called. But they had this whole like crowdfunding thing. They were trying to get money to research it. So they're working on it now. And apparently it would use like 97% less of like the land and resources and water that would be needed if you had like the regular meat industry going. So I see it as promising, although I'm not sure how close we are to it. Like they were
Yeah.
saying that they might have like a prototype in about 5 years or something, but like in order to actually like mass produce this stuff and get it to people at like an affordable price, I'm not sure how quickly that's going to happen. But like I'm in support of that. I mean, like I personally wouldn't eat it because again, I don't see it as food, and like part of the reason why I am vegan is for health. So like I wouldn't personally want to eat that. But for people who are just never going to be convinced that like we don't actually need meat and like it's better not to have it, then like I would much prefer they would eat this lab grown meat. But it's like ironic because people are looking at like a lot of people I've heard them say like, oh, that's gross, like ew. And I'm just like, you're literally eating a slaughtered dead carcass. Like that's like, no, you can't eat just like this lab grown carcass. Like,
That's so funny to me that people
yeah,
think that like lab meat is somehow like grosser than just eating like a dead killed animal.
yeah, I know, I
Like,
know,
yeah.
I
Well,
know.
I think that this sounds like it probably falls into the category of like, okay, it's a good idea, but we also like can't sit around waiting for it to happen, you know?
Mhm.
Like because it
Yeah,
I get like until this is like on the threshold of becoming mass produced, like we don't
right.
have, maybe there will be lab grown meat, but we can't just be like, well, I'll just keep eating meat until they figure that out. Like
Right.
to be clear, I would definitely eat lab grown meat. Like that sounds
Hmm.
awesome to me. Like
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
want to because it's like
Yeah, and I feel like because like part of the reason why like meat is considered so unhealthy is because it's like first of all it's like injected with so many hormones and everything
mhm,
because they're kept in such unsanitary conditions and they're like sickly. It's like dipped in bleach. They're fed antibiotics, which is leading to antibiotic resistance, which is terrifying. So and it also has a lot of cholesterol and like it's really fatty and everything because they're feeding it like corn. There was actually one this came out in the news that they were feeding cows Skittles in one farm. It was actually ridiculous. Um, so yeah, like part of the reason why meat is like unhealthy and then leads to these issues. So in a lab, conceivably, you could like maybe doctor or engineer meat that would like have less cholesterol or like would not have hormones and shit injected into it or would not be eating antibiotics, etc. So yeah, I mean, if people like are holding out for this meat idea or this lab grown meat, it's like, well, why don't you like start now by like stopping eating meat, and then once we have that, you can go back to it. Like that would be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
So
makes sense to me. What doesn't make it's I think the people who are the most illogical in this argument are the people who are like, no, I don't want to eat the clean, perfect lab meat. I only want to eat the meat that's raised from animals that are raised in their own shit and then killed. Like that is a weird argument.
I know, and I'm like, those people need to watch Earthlings or something. Like those
Yeah.
people actually need to see like
So sorry, what is Earthlings?
what's the food that you're eating. It's this documentary that is narrated by Joaquin Phoenix,
Oh.
actually. And it basically looks, yeah, I mean, I guess it's like a really intense look at like what happens to animals in every single industry. So it's not just the food industry, it's like for makeup, like animal testing, and like I don't know, the entertainment industry, like circuses, etc. But I don't know, apparently it's like just like beyond like like there's no way you can watch this and like come out of that and being like, yeah, I want to still eat meat or like wear it. But I haven't seen it because I was already vegetarian, and I'm like, I really don't need to be seeing that at this point in my life. But
I
yeah.
think I probably need to watch it.
Yeah, check it out. Everyone who's like on the fence or thinking like, I don't really give a shit, like check it out. Also Cowspiracy.
Yes. Someone in the chat says lab grown meat is infused with estrogen. Oh wait, oh no, they said the lab grown meat infused with estrogen. Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, that
Why not? I'm not even looking at the chat. What does people say? It's going so fast I can't like follow a single
soy
bit of
meat.
it.
Well, there is kind of soy meat. There's like knockoff
Oh, there is.
products that
Yeah,
are
absolutely. There's like,
yeah.
especially like you're in America, you can get all the good stuff. Like in Canada,
Mhm.
we don't have as much as you. You have the Beyond Meat Burger, which is like they actually infuse it with, I think it's like beet juice, so that when
Hmm.
you cook it, it like bleeds, and
Oh.
it's like the
For
most
those of
meat.
us who've acquired a taste for blood but still want to go vegan.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like if you like really want the most meaty veggie meat you can have, then go check out the Beyond Meat Burger. I think there's also the Impossible Burger. You guys have like chick un, like chick quote unquote un stuff, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Like yeah, like there's Gardein, there's so many amazing things. Like I can get anything, especially living in like Toronto or whatever, like I can get anything veganized that you would imagine that you could have. Like I can even get like vegan steak and shrimp and like whatever, and it's like it just tastes great, you know? So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, like I mean, I'm feeling pretty convinced by this conversation. Like, I feel that to
That's awesome.
start with this, I would need to like completely rethink the way that I cook because I've come to
Mhm.
like rely so heavily on animal products that like I have to kind of like I guess it's the saving grace for me is gonna be like spicy. I love spicy food,
Mhm.
and spices are vegan, so you can
Mhm.
put and like you can put that on anything. So I should learn to
Yeah.
do like Indian food, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of like really great food or like Thai food or everything. Like this
Yeah.
is all like a lot of it is vegetarian. But if you want to just like eat your normal kind of like comfort food, you can also just like buy some of these products that are like vegan meats. It's like there's like vegan meatballs, there's like literally everything that you can imagine. You know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
like if you yeah, I don't know, it like just I would recommend just like going slowly with it, like just like cut out beef and that's it, and then go with that for a bit, and then be like, okay, now I'm going to cut out chicken, just so you can kind of like figure out like other things to make, so you're not just like diving into this whole new thing. Otherwise it would be like it's just too
I'm
much,
not gonna
you know?
last. Yeah, if I tried to go vegan,
Yeah.
I wouldn't make it a week. I don't think. Like,
Yeah, exactly
yeah,
right. It would just be like so overwhelming. So like just go
yeah.
like very slowly and then kind of figure out, and then like yeah, check out like what's available in Baltimore in terms of like what you could replace things with, and then like yeah, I don't know. There's like pretty much everything you can just make veganized. Like I don't know, like vegan tacos, like just put beans in it instead of like beef. You know what I mean? Or like you can make anything, but people don't really think about it because it's just like, well, what do
Mhm.
you eat? It's like literally everything that you eat. I just like, but yeah,
Yeah, someone in the chat suggested I should go vegan for a week. I could do that. That's true. It would be an interesting little experiment. Um, that's not
yeah. But I
cheesy.
feel like yeah, I feel like you wouldn't like it
Yeah, because I
like
probably wouldn't
right
like it.
off the
That's
bat.
true.
Yeah.
Um,
Like go slow so that you're just like, all right, this is like not that big of a chore. Because if it's a chore, you're gonna be like, oh, I give up, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could definitely do no red meat for a week. That would be not too
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And then
Um,
like, yeah, eventually then be like, okay, now I'm gonna try just only eating fish and like whatever, cheese and eggs and shit still. So then it's like not that hard.
yeah. Oh, it seems so hard. I'll have to use something else for crazy props on my YouTube channel too.
Yeah, and just get some vegan meats.
Well, that's actually not a bad idea. I actually do most of the milk I use on my channel, by the way, everyone, is soy milk.
Oh, great.
Um,
Great.
so all that milk I'm pouring on myself, I'm using soy milk. Part of it is that like
Wonderful.
I didn't want like cow milk in the bathtub, you know? It just it seemed like it would smell bad and shit. And I was like, the soy milk seemed like the safer option.
Yeah.
I know these are not like the normal
Yeah.
concerns you have to deal with when going vegan, but like
Yeah.
for me it's an issue. Like, what am I going to pour on my face in the bath now if I can't use
Yeah,
blood?
yeah. Well, soy is good. I know. I mean, like, I
Yeah,
don't know if you want me to dive into like a tirade against the dairy industry, but like, yeah, I'm glad you
yeah,
weren't pouring dairy milk on your face.
dairy
It's
milk
like
on my face.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then this beet juice thing for blood, that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
look
It
into that.
fries up like just like meat. So, and I feel like
Uh,
you can get it there. I can't get it here. So you should like maximize your American status and make use of all these vegan products.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. I guess, and then as far in terms of like grotesque like sexual innuendo, like vegetables are pretty good for that.
Sorry, you like kind of froze there. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, for the sake of like a grotesque sexual innuendo, I guess like vegetables can be good for that.
Yeah, I feel
Sometimes I
like
put meat on.
you've used like watermelons before, haven't
I
you?
totally have, yeah, and that actually did get kind of uncomfortable. Yeah,
Yeah, it did.
I guess my initial thought is like there's something just like just viscerally horrifying about meat that I sort of exploit that it's
Mhm,
horrifying.
mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it is horrifying,
yeah,
and that's why it works. But yeah,
right.
I'm surprised you got so many comments like from vegans saying that because yeah,
I didn't get so many comments, but it definitely comes up. Like every time I do a video that has meat in it, like there's at least like 5 comments about it.
mm. That's kind of cool because like I would never
Yeah,
think like I'm a vegan and I would never be like, oh my god, but like that's kind of cool.
yeah, yeah. That's not really my personality type either. But
Yeah.
so there's this idea that like vegans are like the most annoying, like preachy people. I think like a few of them are, but like I think that a lot of times like meat eaters are pretty preachy themselves.
Hmm.
Like,
Oh my
do you
god,
find
yeah.
that like people get like super defensive about it?
Oh yeah. Like I won't even like people always say like, oh, like you don't have to or whatever. A vegan will always tell you that they're a vegan. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
no, like I'll just be eating, they're eating my food and they're just like, where's the beef? And then they'll like I don't know, they'll have all these responses. Like they'll either be like, oh well, I only buy my meat from like grass-fed, like organic, whatever. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
I don't care where you buy your meat. Or they'll be like, I don't even eat that much. And I'm like, okay, I don't really care. Or they'll be like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like you're gonna get sick, or like I don't know, just
Yeah.
all of these like really weird responses. And I'm just like, I'm just trying to eat. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess like it's weird, isn't it, how people like get so like they insist that you share their preferences. Like
Yeah.
I guess because when I was younger, I really didn't like cheese, and like every single time I was like,
Hmm.
they're like, why aren't you eating cheese? And I was like, because you don't really like it. And they were like, you should learn to like it right now. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's weird that like
Yeah. Well, the funniest thing is when people are like, "Oh, like you don't know what you're missing." I'm like, "I used to eat meat.
yeah.
Like I'm aware. Thanks." Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, no one can ever say that to me because I'll be very thoroughly aware.
Mhm.
This is like so I feel bad for people who don't drink because I feel like
Mhm.
people who drink are such assholes to them. Like because
It's true.
they're always like I see this happen all the time with like someone's like you know like why don't you have a drink like and I
Oh my
don't drink.
God.
It's like this is the time not to say anything, but
Mhm.
they go like why? It's just like
Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah.
please stop.
Yeah.
Because the
That
thing is,
was my pet peeve. Like when I would go to parties, like if I just was deciding not to drink for some reason, and I
yeah,
drink, but like I don't know, I went through a time where I was like, I'm not gonna drink tonight. And like the amount of shit I would get for that, I would just be like, I need to leave the party because like everyone is just like, drink, drink, drink. Like,
yeah,
why? What's wrong with you? Like, aren't you having fun? Like, I want you to have fun. I'm like, I am having fun. But actually, I'm not because you're yelling at me. But like,
yeah. See, I don't get like as someone who's just constantly drinking, I don't get why people want to foist it on everyone else. Like,
I have no idea.
I don't
Yeah.
care. Like, as long as they don't object to me doing it, then I
Yeah.
don't care if they're doing it or not.
I
I don't
know.
know.
It's
It's
really
just weird.
uncomfortable actually when people do that. But yeah.
Someone super chats to Mexie just to guess, but is it usually men who try to tell you what to eat? Or
Yeah,
is that
it
just an
is.
assumption? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And like I think it's usually
Like
them who
I
tell you
yeah,
to drink too.
100%. I've never had a woman come in my face and be like, "Why aren't you drinking? Drink,
Why did you
drink."
drink? Yeah, it's like funny to even try to imagine that.
No. And I've never had a woman be like, "Oh my God, where's the beef on your plate?" Like, "Oh, what would you do if I took this meat on my plate and threw it in your face? What would you do then?" I'm just like, I would be really upset. Like, don't do that.
Oh my God. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe men are the problem.
Maybe.
Everyone should just become soy girls. That's the solution.
Yes, exactly. I know. I'm like, what's this soy boy? Like soy girls, man. I know. I mean, like there are so many like, I don't know, bodybuilder guys that are trying to like shake that
Yeah,
image
isn't that
anyway, right?
interesting? Like
Yeah.
how
I mean, like people were
vegan.
commenting on the tweet that you put up being like, "Oh, I thought you're going to be talking to Vegan Gains." And like he's like the number one like alt-right like
Yeah.
just
Well,
raised like bodybuilder bro.
like even the golden one was
Yeah,
vegetarian for a while.
I know.
Like
I
the
know.
most alpha motherfucker of all time
Yeah.
was not eating
Well, and then
meat.
there's
Yeah.
like Corey McCarthy, who's like vegan,
Mm.
like bodybuilder, obviously Nazi.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of
So
like
yeah.
overlap between like alt-right and like
Mhm.
veganism. What is the deal with that?
Yeah. I actually just made a whole podcast about this, so maybe I can share it. But yeah,
Oh,
it's
I'll check
like
that
kind
out.
of yeah, it's part of their like ideology of basically like racial purity,
Mm.
like blood and soil, basically. Like the Aryan people are connected to the earth and like it shows moral and racial superiority that they don't consume animals. It's
So,
crazy.
all right,
Yeah.
that's bizarre, but like, I mean, it seems I can sort of see how it would fit in. Well,
Mhm.
it's sort of connected to like because like Richard Spencer has this particular take on whiteness that's like, oh, let's take like gentrified urban chic culture and make that into like the thing that we celebrate with Nazi like zeal. Like,
Mhm.
I wonder if it's part of that same thing, like sea salt and veganism and sushi and like obviously not sushi and veganism, but
Yeah.
like let's
There's
take all
vegan
that stuff
sushi,
and
PS people.
that's gonna be like the whiteness that we celebrate.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. And I mean, it kind of, yeah, it goes back to like the Nazi German position on like, yeah, environmentalism and animal welfare, etc. Yeah, it's all in the podcast. It's like, it's very disturbing, um, especially because it's obviously like, yeah, we're so morally superior for not enacting violence on animals while we fight for this like ethnic cleansing and like
Yeah.
ethno state, right? So it's like, yeah, it's kind of bad for the movement,
I
to be
guess
honest.
I'm sure it's bad for the movement. I mean, like there's this
Yeah.
does anyone know if sorry, do you know if there's like if what the historical genuine story is about like Hitler was a vegetarian? Is that true?
So like apparently that's a myth that was like propagated by his PR team to like make him seem like he was this exceptional like honorable, morally superior kind of a
Oh,
man. But yeah, apparently he did eat meat. And like he also like was very like visibly cruel to animals, like his dog, etc., which is not surprising to me because like there's been a lot of studies of like slaughterhouse workers and like the psychological trauma that like they go through. But that like violent crimes and like rape and murder, etc., are like highly increased in areas where there are slaughterhouses or like in cases of like domestic abuse it's it's like not uncommon for like an abuser to also be abusive to like the family pets, etc. So yeah, I think there's some ties there that are kind of disturbing.
Yeah, because I know that's probably gets used against vegetarians or vegans too. But like, I
Yeah.
think I don't know. As someone who's like, I know this is not super helpful to the vegan discussion, but as someone who's like very interested in the alt-right and like their psychology, it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting to me that they're into veganism because
Mm-hmm.
maybe like on a first kind of guess, I might think that they would be really into eating meat because they're so like
Mm-hmm.
masculinist, right? And they're so
Mm-hmm.
so paranoid about like degeneracy and feminization of society that like
Mm-hmm.
veganism seems like it would fit into that panic narrative. But
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe it's that they have a kind of like ethics of purity in general. And like
Mm-hmm.
meat is sort of viscerally understood by human cultures to be like potentially impure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the most religious codes involve some kind of a prohibition against certain kinds of meat anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's actually like I don't want to reduce all politics to like psychology or reduce it to like temperament or anything like that. But you can,
Mm-hmm.
there's sort of like a temperament that tracks certain different views. And I think actually the big meat eaters are the like anarcho-capitalist, like libertarian guys, because
Mm-hmm.
their sort of temperamental politics is based on like not having a disgust reaction to anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gambling, heroin, eating meat, let it all in. Who cares? Not my problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is very antithetical to the like Nazi attitude, which is like, no, we all must conform to this like strict regimen of purity. And like veganism does
Mm-hmm.
fit into that more than it fits into the libertarian thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right because there are a lot of like people on, yeah, I guess the libertarian right or yeah, right wingers who really do put down veganism and really think that it is like absolutely ludicrous and yeah, like soy boy, whatever. And then
Cucking
there's the
ourselves.
faction, yeah, and then there's like the faction of like ethno nationalists who actually really do believe that they're like doing God's work and that
Yeah.
they are morally on the and we're racially pure and with our diets and everything, right? So, uh,
Yeah. God, it's
mm,
so interesting.
yeah, I know. It's sad when I found out about it, like, because there's a lot in like the online vegan, I guess, or like just in the online like neo-Nazi sphere. There's a lot of vegans, and when I found out about it, I was like, oh, this is so disheartening. Um, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't deter me from like, okay, we really do have to do this, but yeah, fuck,
Yeah, I
fuck
doubt that
that part of the
not that
movement.
that's gonna be that much of an obstacle to vegan activism, I think, because I think
Yeah.
most people's heads like this association between like no one thinks, oh, far right politics when they think of veganism, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
I know.
if anything, it's a testament to the fact that it's possible to break through the usual boundaries with veganism. Like,
Mhm, mhm.
not that I think like, yay, the Nazis have gone vegan. That's not a thing to celebrate, I don't think. But but like,
Yeah,
uh,
I had people commenting on that podcast saying basically that, like, "Oh, are you saying you don't want the Nazis to go vegan? Like, this is great," or whatever. And I was like, okay, I don't know. This is not really the messaging I'm going for, but okay.
yeah, that's not right. That's not the point.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah.
Oh,
Anyway.
Leon Trotsky super chats to say that this has convinced him to go vegan.
Oh, awesome.
So we got Trotsky on board.
That's awesome. Honestly, I don't know how you're reading the chat. It's like it's so
It's a
fast.
acquired skill. I kind of like see it out of the corner of my eye and vaguely register it, and just occasionally it like bubbles up to my conscious awareness.
I think someone just said hail Cetan, which is kind of funny. Oh, I just saw the Trotsky thing. There we
Vegan Nazi jokes.
go. Well, I'm glad I'm convincing some people. Like it's really like polarizing. Like some people are just like, yeah, I get it. Like, okay, I'm just like not really there. I just don't really feel like a pull. And
Mhm.
some people are just so mad that you would even suggest to them that like leftists should think about going vegan or that like just even like that animals have sentience. And I'm like, this is like not a debated thing. Like, of course they have
Yeah,
sentience. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I saw somewhere that like apparently in like I saw a headline like in Switzerland it's now like illegal to boil lobsters. without
Oh,
killing them
good. Yeah.
first. Um,
Good. Yeah. It makes me sick when people do that because I'm just like, oh God. Like,
it's a
you know.
it's like a long-standing debate about whether they feel pain. There's
Hmm.
that famous like David Foster Wallace essay about it. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like more and more stuff is coming out now that's like, yeah, they do feel pain. But
yeah,
anyway, like,
that's what
but
the
even like,
conclusion of the David Foster Wallace piece is actually
okay.
probably they do.
Yeah, so like more and more is coming out that they do feel pain, but I feel like even if you're like an ethical vegan or if you're doing this for environmental reasons, it's like it shouldn't really matter about like some arbitrary like how much pain do they feel? You know what I mean? It should be
Yeah.
like, okay, we shouldn't be like commodifying their lives and like destroying the oceans and everything else. You know what I mean? It shouldn't just come down to like, well, I don't think they feel pain, so they're, like, and it's like, you don't, how do you know? Like, you're not in their bodies, you're not feeling what it feels like to be boiled alive. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty interesting like philosophical discussion about it. Basically, I mean, the conclusion generally is like there's at least a significant probability that they do feel pain, which
mhm,
suggests, I think, the ethical consequence that we should give the animals the benefit of the doubt. Like,
mhm,
um,
yeah.
I guess what criteria they use? They use like expressive criteria. So does an animal react to pain in a similar way to the way a human reacts to pain? A lot of times the answer is yes. They look at like neurological features. Like does the animal have a centralized nervous system? Does it have receptors that notice tissue damage? And most of with animals, the answer is yes. Um,
Mhm.
so the question, the debate gets only fuzzy when you start getting on the level of like oysters and things, where it's like
Yeah.
oysters probably don't feel pain, but like uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
anything
Yeah,
above
that
that
is a
probably
weird one.
does.
I know there are some vegans who still eat like oysters and like clams, I think, or
Yeah,
whatever. I only like recently heard about this and it just sounded really weird to me. But yeah, I guess that's a thing that happens.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what about like some people I know like are talking about eating insects or adding insects to a human
Oh
diet?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So again, this is something that I would not do as a vegan. Like it depends like why you're going vegan. So like yeah, I started out as a vegan because of environmental reasons and then health reasons and then I've now also like taken in the ethical reasons because I like learned a lot more about all the industries and like exactly what happens to different animals. So I kind of view insects as like they still have a life and so I wouldn't
Mhm.
really want to like be killing them and eating them. And I also just find it kind of weird. But yeah, they're saying like crickets and like grasshoppers could basically provide a lot of protein for us if we moved away from meat. Because apparently they have like a ridiculous amount of protein inside their tiny bodies. I think they're already making protein bars out of like cricket protein.
There's
So I don't know.
like a
I mean,
Mom's Organic Market is a chain in the US. It's one near me that has a they sell like mealworms and dried crickets and dried grasshoppers just in a very unappetizing, like just scoop them out, put them in a bag.
yeah.
And like I insects really kind of gross me out, so I'm not super into this, but like I
Yeah.
am curious and
Mhm. Yeah.
I just don't know like what do you do with it? You just just snack on them like
I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I spend a lot of time in Asia for my research, and yeah, I mean, they kind of have a lot of them out at the markets there.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I guess I kind of wonder again, like under the capitalist system, like, like would that end up being like also very environmentally taxing, or like would that just lead to its own problems, like commodifying crickets, et cetera, and like starting to breed those? I'm like, what would be the implications of doing that? I don't really know all
commodifying
of that.
crickets. This is the Marxist analysis that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, and like yeah,
Yeah.
what's going to happen like if you make these like if it's like a factory farm but you're growing crickets? Like I really don't know the implications of that in terms of like workers, environment, etc. I mean, I feel like we have to just move away from this model in general. Um Also like the protein requirements for a human have been so exaggerated, especially in North America. Like the amount of protein that people eat is so much more than you actually need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so it's like we don't actually need like all of this fucking protein. Like if we were eating like a whole foods plant-based diet, like it would be cool. We don't have to like mass produce crickets like we could get, like, people don't really realize that like so many animals actually get their protein from plants, like huge ass animals like gorillas and rhinoceros, etc. Like they all get their protein and everything from plants, and then us eating those animals, it's like it's just a secondary way of getting that protein, but the protein came from the plants, you know what I mean? Like there's this hilarious meme where this jaguar is like walking up to this big rhinoceros, and the rhinoceros is like, oh, like not this dude again, and he's like, but bro, like where do you get your protein? And I'm just like, yeah, like like we don't need that much. So I don't know, I feel like it's like really been in service of like the meat and dairy industry,
Yeah.
and now it seems like it's going to be in service of like the insect industry to be like, get your protein, like eat all these fucking crickets. It's like you
So
don't need
I
that
think like
much.
yeah, American men in particular, there's studies showing that they have this misconception, like a huge misconception about how much protein is actually nutritionally necessary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, it's interesting how so many of there's a lot of sort of sketchy things going on when it comes to the nutritional advice that we're given. Like I
Mm.
remember growing up, like there was in this all over the school cafeteria, these like got milk. There's this campaign to try to
Mm-hmm.
encourage like milk growth, ostensibly presented as if it were from some kind of government agency promoting good nutrition. Turns out actually
Mm-hmm.
to have been like the dairy industry behind this the entire time, like just
Mm-hmm.
advertising. It's just advertising in public
Yeah.
schools. um
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the big meat and dairy lobbies are like 100% behind like the FDA recommendations
yeah,
for like different things that you need. And they recommend that you eat cheese and drink dairy for calcium, but it's like study after study shows us that that's not actually a good way to get your calcium, and that like yeah. So, yeah, maybe I'll like comment in the stream and like show some documentaries that kind of show like what's going on like behind this, like the where like follow the money, and like why are you being told that you need like to drink milk every day, which is like ridiculous. Like we're the only species of animal that would drink the mammary fluid of a different species of animal. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're
yeah.
not like, would you go up and like drink the breast milk of an orangutan or
Well, and
something?
like
No.
many human
So,
populations actually
and drinking a
don't
cow's
have
breast milk
an
meant for a
enzyme
baby
to.
cow. Sorry, I think there
Sorry,
was
we got lag for a second.
yeah.
Yeah, there's lag on the camera for a second. Yeah, I like a lot of human populations do not have like the enzyme to digest lactose, and so I seem to have developed like lactose intolerance as an adult, so
Right.
I don't really eat much dairy myself.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that it's definitely an interesting thing to be presented as if it's like a necessary part of our diet, because clearly it's not,
Yeah.
and
Like it contains growth hormone. It's meant to grow a baby cow up to size
yeah,
as fast as possible. So it contains like bovine growth hormone to like grow a cow. Like yeah, again there's like memes showing like women or like humans like suckling at this cow, and I'm just like, yeah, this is really weird. Like, you know what I mean? Like you would never suckle at like anyone else, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't just drink the breast milk of rats or something. So it's like, why are we drinking the breast milk of cows and then pretending like we need this nutritionally in
yeah.
our body? Like, no. Anyway.
I think like the most egregious example I know of the like nutrition guidelines being influenced by lobbying is actually not related to meat, but related to sugar.
Mm,
Um, like this idea, this vilification of fat of the last few decades, turns out not to be scientifically sound, and actually
mm,
sort of influenced by the sugar industry trying to sort of point the finger about obesity away from themselves when actually like corn syrup and soda is a huge factor
mm-hmm.
in that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. But then like we like the United States especially is like so involved in the corn lobby because
yeah.
like so like again they're kind of like, okay, yeah, we're gonna let this slide.
I take it, I don't know that much about this. I take it there's a connection between the corn lobby and the meat industry, since so much of the animals
Mm,
or livestock are fed corn.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like just subsidizing corn so that America can produce so much of it and fill everything with high fructose corn syrup, feed it to cows, etc. Yeah, it's really really disgusting.
Someone in the chat a while ago wanted to ask you about thoughts on veganism and intersectionality. I don't know how you want to parse that question, but
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people that I know in the movement, I guess, or consider themselves to be pro-intersectional vegans. And so with that, it's like approaching veganism from the understanding that like a lot of these systems of oppression are connected, like patriarchy, capitalism, carnism, etc. And like trying to build a movement in a way that is pro-intersectional, so that is like it's anti-racist, it's anti-sexist, etc. Because yeah, there's a lot of I guess connections between like as you said, the gendered politics of food, but then also like women's exploitation and sexualization, and then like kind of what happens to like dairy cows or laying hens, and how like the females are like basically like the dairy cows especially, they're forcibly impregnated on what's called a rape rack, and then like forced to just reproduce and reproduce and reproduce so that they produce milk, and then the babies are like stolen away from them and turned into veal. So
I'm
like
surprised that they call it something so shocking.
yeah,
You would
I
think
know
that they would call
exactly.
it the reproductive facilitation device, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess like a pro-intersectional approach to veganism, yeah, it just recognizes that these oppressions are intersecting, and that yeah, like the capitalist system and patriarchy, et cetera, have a lot to do with our current understanding of meat, and like our current situation where all these companies are, you know, promoting this shit to us, and that it's like hyper masculinized. And yeah, I don't know if that's like a solid
Yeah.
answer.
No, that's like I think that's a great answer. I think that's actually something that I like. I'm interested in trying to convey that message in a like different way than it's usually conveyed, because I think most people when they hear talk about like, oh, like meat is actually patriarchal, and like this sounds just like the crazy feminism, right, to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that may if I've been thinking about doing a video about meat for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. Initially I was thinking of doing it about like this whole making it about this whole thing about individual ethical choices versus sort of collective political problems, but I think that probably I wouldn't come out of that with enough of a message. um
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, talking about I mean, like, I don't know, I try to like set up these like challenges for myself when I make videos, where I take some kind of like leftist topic that to the average person who has not taken a humanities seminar
Mm-hmm.
just seems like batshit crazy postmodern Marxist nonsense, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then like try to I don't know, convey it in like beer drinking everyman terminology.
Mm-hmm. Which like you kick ass at, like you really succeed.
Well, thank you.
um yeah, so there's this book called The Sexual Politics of Meat
Ah,
by
yeah, I read that
Harold J.
a long
Adams. You
time ago.
did? Okay.
A long time ago.
Okay. I
Or
haven't actually
excerpts at
read it, but
least.
everyone recommends it and says that it's kind of along the lines of what I was saying.
Yeah,
Um
I
yeah,
think
I can like
I don't remember this very well, but I think it talks about like sort of links between, I think, the in like advertising and so on, like carnivorous desire and like male sexual gaze and stuff like that, and the way
mm-hmm.
like one is like transferable to the other,
Mm-hmm.
as it shows up in like advertising, sexualized advertising, meat
Mm-hmm.
advertising, just like all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of ways where like
Yeah.
it's pretty like theory, you know, with like
Yeah.
it's a lot of talk about like how like the male sexual gaze is carnivorous or
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But
kind
like
of
if you actually start to look at some of the advertisement stuff, and you're just like, fuck it, it's true. Like, you know, it really works.
yeah,
There's also
you need
like
examples. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll send you some stuff. Also, like the girl that I do my podcast with, is Maureen from a privileged vegan, and
Mhm.
she does a lot of stuff like in videos about this kind of topic, and like pro intersectional veganism and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's super. That's good. That's a
Yeah.
good ContraPoint subject too, because it's really like sleazy and weird.
Yeah. 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 I would be down to watch that video, so I hope
Yeah,
you make it.
I might, I'll see if I can, that might be, I might add that to the list for 2018 videos.
Yeah. Nice. What's on the list coming up? I'm excited.
Coming up, I'm doing, so the next one I'm doing is the, it's about a bad theory about what trans women are called autogynephilia, which says that basically what we have is like a paraphilia, a sexual obsession with ourselves as the image of ourselves as women. Um, so there's like a long, it's a pseudoscience theory, but it's gained traction in part because of this like idea that it's been suppressed by political correctness. So I want to dive into that. Also, speaking of creepy, weird, sleazy shit, that's definitely up there.
Yeah.
Then I'm thinking I'm doing capitalism part 2. Probably that'll be March. I was
Nice.
thinking in February I wanted to do a video about structural racism in America. Sort of back in the day, I did this old video called about Baltimore and the Baltimore
Yeah, it was
uprising.
amazing. I share that with everyone
Yeah,
because I'm like, this is actually like a very clear example of structural racism. Because whenever people ask me about it, I'm like, I don't know, I'd have to like teach you too much for you to understand this concept. But I feel like that just shows it so blatantly. It's
yeah,
such a good video.
yeah. So basically, I that video is my least viewed video, and
That's ridiculous.
I think part of it has to do with it being framed badly and too specifically. So it seems, not that many people care about Baltimore who aren't from Baltimore. So basically what I want to do is not just remake the video, but let's sort of take that video and then just like expand on it and expand it to a wider topic area. But basically make a video that's very much in that vein, only like with my 2018 video making skills and with I think better sort of framing story. So that's going to be February probably. Yeah.
Man, I am so excited for that. That will be, yeah, your Baltimore video is probably my favorite video of yours because I was just like, oh, that was just like so good, like so spot on. And I can share it with everyone and be like, this is what I'm talking about when I say
Yeah.
structural racism or systematic racism because people just don't get it.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me that about the Baltimore video, especially like leftists tell me that about the Baltimore video. Although it's like for everyone else, it seems to be just like a very neglected video. So that's kind of why I want to do it again. Basically, I think that there is something good about it, but also I think I can improve on it. And so, yeah, I think that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Oh man, that's very exciting.
Yeah,
I am excited for that. And then this gendered politics of meat video.
yeah. I don't know if it'll be a video just about the gendered politics of meat, but I can imagine a like 3.5 minute section on that being in a video about something else.
Yeah.
So definitely I'll
Sounds
put
good.
that in the idea list.
Good.
So we've been going for like an hour and a half. That went by fast.
Yeah.
We can wrap up this soon, but can I ask you a troll question that I ask a lot of people?
Sure.
So basically, we need to talk about human meat. Like, what?
Oh God.
Like, just how bad is it? Like,
Just how bad is it?
yeah. Like, well, I mean, I guess there's a couple questions about the human meat thing. So usually the question I ask is like, are you curious about the taste of human meat? Or like, would you try it under like ethically ideal circumstances where like the consent of everyone involved is in play and like it's verifiably clean by medical experts and like, so I just think you learn something about someone by whether or not they would try it out of curiosity.
That's a really difficult question because like yeah, I can't really imagine that ever being the case. Like my initial
Yeah.
reaction would be like, oh no.
It's to reject the thought experiment.
Pardon me?
Oh, your initial impulse is to reject the thought experiment as like inherently absurd.
No. My first reaction would be to like be like, no, I would not eat that. Not because I'm like, oh, eating humans is gross, but because I'm like eating any meat, like any dead flesh. Like, because I'm like, I've been eating plants now for like so long. So I'm like, the idea of eating like dead flesh to me is kind of like why would I put that in my body?
I hear that from a lot of people who like have been vegan for a long time. Like meat just comes to seem like not food at all.
No, yeah, I don't consider it food.
How
So
long have
I'm
you been
just like,
vegan?
a couple years, but I've been vegetarian for 10 years.
Oh,
And
okay.
like for a long time in that I wasn't eating like eggs. I was like maybe eating cheese sometimes, but not really. So it was like, yeah. So yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, I guess that's like, yeah, it's a difficult question.
So I
So I
guess,
feel like,
yeah,
no, I would not want to, but at the same time, it's like, well, how many chances am I gonna get to
that's the
see what
thing,
it
right?
tastes like?
Like I just want to know how it tastes. Is that so wrong? I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't know.
Um,
Yeah.
so I guess then the other
Yeah.
troll question would be like Soylent Green scenario. Like, why are we wasting perfectly good bodies by burying them and burning? Well, I guess that's answered by the health problem. It's probably not super healthy to eat human meat.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a good question for carnists. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you just want protein and like assuming that it tasted like chicken or whatever, like so you have the taste, you have the protein, like what's your aversion? It's just
Mhm.
because you've been taught that like this form of dead carcass is consumable and this one is not. Even between chickens and dogs, like you still make that distinction, right?
Oh, so
So
you turn the scenario around to make the meat eaters answer it.
right, it's like
Yeah.
carnists, like, yeah, why wouldn't you want to eat this if you're eating this? You know?
Yeah.
And it
Hmm.
is like it is a more like environmentally friendly thing to do. So
Right. And it's not like, well, assuming everyone's down
really
with
not
it,
like
which they will be after the re-education campaign,
yeah,
then
exactly.
like it's not even like it's maybe more ethical than eating animals against their will.
Exactly. Because I'm like, these people died naturally. They're probably like they weren't force fed antibiotics or like pumped full of hormones or anything. So
Yeah. It's a
eat
pretty
your
good
loved
point.
ones.
I'm convinced. All right.
Yeah.
Well, now that Mexie has convinced me that cannibalism is good, we
Mm.
no. This was a fun stream.
Yeah,
I'm
it
going
was.
to try to not eat so much meat this week and see how it goes.
Awesome. Even just red meat, like just start slow
Yeah.
and like, yeah, and like explore
Um,
options.
and do you have any final thoughts?
No. I just love you very much.
Oh, thank you. I love you too. All
Aw.
right, before this gets too adorable, I'm going to end the
Okay.
stream.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Maxie. This was great.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you so much.